friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here today for another Monday This and That vlog where I talk about all kinds of different things, touching on a few different topics, answering questions that have come in the past week, and whatever else I feel like talking about. So let's get to the topics of today. The main one starting off is how to heal a fracture or a bad sprain or strain. So I recently did something to my big toe, and I'm pretty sure it's a stress fracture, though it took me 2 days to finally figure out that was what was going on with my toe. It hurt. It was excruciating. It's funny how one small part of the body can cause you just to feel terrible all over. But I've broken toes before, so it wasn't the first time. It's just the first time it ever happened with my big toe. And because it wasn't one traumatic event, you know, like smacking it really hard against something or dropping something on it, it was a series of events that caused that I finally realized what was going on, because it was started out kind of hurting and it was getting worse, and then it got so bad it was swelling up. I couldn't put my shoes on and I couldn't move it. I couldn't have anything touch it. It was excruciating. It was terrible. But then once I realized it had to be a stress fracture, or at the very least a very bad sprain where something was tore in there, I then knew exactly what to do. Immediately, the very first thing I did was make myself a soak like I did in previous years. I even did a video on this using comfrey, arnica, and Epsom salts, and getting the water as hot as I can stand it, and then just soaking it for at least 20 minutes. But the results I got were immediate. Not that it healed up immediately on the first soak, but the pain subsided incredibly, the swelling went down, and I was finally able to sleep without crying myself to sleep because it hurt so bad. So yes, if you have any kind of bad sprain or even a fracture, as long as it's something you don't have to go reset or whatever, comfrey is amazing. A lot of people call it knit bone because of its ability to help bones actually heal themselves. And that can be done in the form of a poultice, which I also did use, but the soak is the number one thing. That's the thing I find the best results with. And then adding arnica, because arnica is also very healing for bruises, sprains, and breaks. So I mix the two together and then heat it up on my wood stove and then just soak it for as long as I can. It's still a little bit tender. I still have to be careful with it, but I can do things now. I had 2 days where I couldn't do anything without just being in complete tears. And then the other thing was, you see this really dark, this is oil, infused oil that I'd started a couple of years ago. This is comfrey arnica with some red pepper flakes in there. But this I infused specifically for using on breaks and very bad sprains. And so in between the soaks, I've been using this oil on there, and just you see how dark that is. This started off as a clear avocado oil, and then infusing it for that long, and then when I found it back there, I'm like, yes. And it was still had been infusing for like 2 years. I strained it off and got this beautiful color. So that's been very helpful. But one of the things that really helped me manage the pain to be able to sleep was my own extract. This is my own recipe. I have a video on it. I do have several different pain extract recipes, but this is my most recent. I've been using this for a couple of years now, and it is the best one I've created so far. And so I'll link to that recipe down below. It's a video recipe along with a written recipe that I actually wrote it down. Though some may call it a tincture, I call it an extract because I don't use high proof alcohol. I simply find using mostly about 3 parts homemade wine. You can use store-bought, but homemade is better if you can, and it's easy to make, and it's better because you know exactly what's in it. And then raw honey. The raw honey just helps with the flavor because I have even though it's got its own benefits, I like using raw honey because it also helps with the flavor, especially when you're talking about this kind of extract that has feverfew in it, which can be very bitter. It makes it much easier to take than my first extracts that were made mostly with feverfew and vinegar. Those were terrible tasting. They worked, but they were terrible. I had actually 2 going back there. They've been sitting back there also for one for a year, one for 2 years. Strained them both off. and topped off my bottle, and then got this jar here, then started a new batch right here. So that's what's going on there. So make sure if you're interested in learning how I do that, there's all kinds of, in fact, I'll link to 2 different videos. One is a list I did a few years ago of all the many different things, natural things, herbs and more that you can use for pain and inflammation, because what's going to work best for each person is going to vary. And some people can't have things like feverfew or echinacea because they're allergic to ragweed and anything that's in the Aster family, which is a lot. They can't have that because they'll have allergic reactions. So knowing other options that you can fall back on is important. So I'll link to both the videos, my recipe video and the video I did on the list of herbs and more for pain. Okay, so I had another question where I actually been asked this quite a bit in regards to my grains. Now, years ago, when I first started my channel, I was soaking my grains. And then I was drying them. Usually I just lay them out on a cookie sheet, as you can see in this picture here, my stoneware cookie sheet, and put it on the very top part of my drying rack on my wood stove and let them dry that way. So I've got a couple of videos showing how to do that, and it's just a matter of soaking them with a little bit of vinegar. Of course, I only use homemade vinegar when I do that. And what that does is people who have sensitivities to grains, especially like the phytates in the grains, and it causes digestive issues, soaking your grains can be very, very helpful. But I stopped doing it because I found no difference. I found it didn't make me feel any better or any worse. Going through the extra steps of soaking for 24 hours, then drying first before I could grind them up. So I just didn't do that anymore. But you may find it, especially if you have gut issues, you may find it very beneficial. If you're grinding your own grains, try soaking them with just a little bit of vinegar. Like I'd put them in a jar, maybe fill the jar up halfway, put about a tablespoon in the quart jar, and then top it off with water and let them soak overnight, and then dry them out the next day. And so while I was at it, I just wanted to show this jar of grains. This is the jar, I just topped it off again. And over the years, even since having my channel, I've changed my blend up, but I almost always am using a blend of grains. And right now I'm just doing 2. I've done 3 or 4 different grains at a time, but so far this is my favorite blend personally. And obviously this is not for gluten-free people, but this is organic hard white wheat and organic barley that I get from Azure Standard, and I use about a 1-to-1 ratio of the grains. The barley is a softer grain. It's going to add more softness. It's really good for more delicate things, you know, breads and stuff. And then the hard white wheat, it's a harder wheat. So the harder wheats are harder to grind, but they grind up much faster than soft wheats, which can grind if you're doing it by hand. They're easy to grind, but it takes forever. You think it'd be the other way around. Nope. The harder the grain, the faster it will go through your grain mill. The softer it is, the longer it takes to go through. So having a blend of soft and hard put together makes a great all-purpose flour. So now my Country Living grain mill, Patrick did fix up an old motor and hook it up there, so it's really easy now. You know, grinding grains by hand, some people may be surprised, it takes a very long time. I think with the hard grains, it was about 15 minutes per cup. With softer grains, it can take up to an hour. But if you have a blend like this, you're going to find it's, if you're doing it by hand, which I can do if I need to, you can, you know, by blending the 2, you can find that balance in there or somewhere in between. And then again, it's just a great all-purpose flour. So I love it. This is my favorite blend. I love the flavor that the barley adds too. So anyway, you can find the link to Azure Standard in the description box. That's my referral link, which means if you do an order through that link of at least $100 or more, I get a credit of $25, and that has really helped us a lot. Thank you to everyone, by the way, who's been using that link to do their Azure Standard orders. And if you'd like to learn more about the Country Living grain mill and the types of grains I use and how I store them, I'll put that in the description box down below the last video I did. I think I just did it last year. Now, moving on, I want to talk a little bit about castor oil just in as far as a brand goes. This is the brand I'm trying right now. I still have a lot of castor oil from Halal Every Day and then another brand, Essential Depot, but then realized that one is not hexane free / cold press, so I use that now only for making soaps. I never noticed that. But this one is an American, definitely an American company. It's a small business, and they specialize only in a few products, one of them being the castor oil. And it is cold pressed and 100% pure and natural. And for those who are really concerned about it, it does come in a glass amber bottle. So I'll be linking to them down below. They're called Creekwood Naturals. I've actually communicated with the lady, very nice lady, and I'm hoping to set up an affiliate at some point once they get that off the ground, because they have another product that I started purchasing from them to try it out. And now, as far as that particular product, it's my favorite brand. I can't mention the name of it on this video because this video is also publishing on YouTube, so I can't say the name of it. But if you go to that website, you'll know right away what that product is. So I use that every day. Oh, and I also wanted to show you, because I bought 2 bottles of the castor oil, and this is how each one is packed. Each one is packed like this. Same thing with the other product, because it's also in glass bottles. So they have it wrapped very nicely inside of a box, and each one comes with a free sticker, and then inside this plastic sealed bag here. And then obviously in the box with lots of packing. I've had nothing get broken. It's just packed really nicely. So I do recommend them, especially again for those who are looking specifically for a good cold pressed pure castor oil that is in glass amber bottles, and you want to support a small US business. Now then, another thing I want to talk about is some of you know I've been working on making a pork-free pepperoni, and I did perfect that recipe that I feel really good about. That recipe is going to be publishing this week along with the written recipe. So I did both. I'm getting better at that, people. Not just having the video recipe and talking and explaining how I do it, but also the written recipe so you can have both. I finally had time to make some pizza using the elk pepperoni, and it was the best tasting pepperoni pizza I've ever had. It was so good. So much better than any store-bought pepperoni I've ever used. And even though I use that one, the elk and turkey one is even better in flavor. It seems like it just makes it just the right combination. So, and I'll be trying that soon for making my Italian sausage soup, trying that same blend of the turkey and elk together. So anyway, be watching for that video in a few days. But yes, the best tasting pepperoni pizza ever. So good. I was actually, I think it was just my best pizza, period. Even though I've been making pizzas for like 25 years, 30 years, something like that. Anyway, and I also want to throw in the fact that this is my favorite pizza pan. I used to use a stoneware pan, but years ago I bought this Lodge cast iron pizza pan. I love this thing. When I did the breadsticks, I made another batch of breadsticks yesterday, and I baked them just on this. The ones I did with the pizza, I only had a little bit of just enough dough to make about 6 breadsticks. I just baked those in a small cast iron pan. But I tell you what, it makes all the difference in the world for the texture you'll get at the bottom of your pizza crust. It makes it nice and crispy and wonderful. And so I do highly recommend cast iron for such things. Oh, and then I want to bring up another vinegar related question, and that is, I've been saying for a long time that your vinegar pH should be 3.5. It can be lower than that, but you don't want it any higher than 3.5. Then somebody said, well, I looked it up and it said 2.5. Well, that's kind of funny, because when you look these things up, it seems like it doesn't matter. You can go to 10 different sites and get 10 different numbers. Now, 2.5 to 3.5 is pretty standard. It can be even lower than that. That's going to equal about a 5% acidity. But it's also like one site I went to said that your homemade vinegar can have a pH of 3.5 and have a 5% acidity. And in that same article, it said distilled vinegar has a 2.5 pH and a 5% acidity. So I don't know if there really is some kind of difference between the homemade that is non-distilled and should look foggy. Like you can see this citrus vinegar I started last week. It should look cloudy. That's how it will start looking after at least a week. Your citrus vinegar in particular will look cloudier, or if you're using whole apple chunks, then yes, it'll get cloudier because it's breaking down and basically disintegrating the apples or the pith in the peels. But even this one is my newest one I started last week, and it's mostly the juniper with the citrus peels, and it looks much more cloudy than it did the day I started it. That's normal. And so when vinegar is distilled, it's clear. If it's totally clear, it's been distilled. And you lose a lot when you distill it. You don't get all the great nutrients, and it's no longer raw at that point. So raw is best. So if you've got a raw homemade vinegar, it's going to be cloudy. I do find that a 3.5 acidity is as strong, at least in flavor and smell, and works just as well for cheese making. That's where you're going to really notice it if you use it right away. If I use a vinegar that's only got a pH of 4 to try to make cheese, it's not going to work. But if it's 3.5 or lower, no problems for it curdling the cheese. So that tells me it's strong enough then to also use for pickling and canning if you choose to do so. But I have a new vinegar making video coming out, and it'll be a few weeks yet before it publishes, but I did get that done. And I try to, each time I shoot a new one like that, I try to be more thorough with my information. So I do suggest, if you're new to this, you watch that video when it comes out. And then quickly, I got to close this video off. If you're going to be a part of the Rain Country subscriber fermenting collaboration, where I put together a slideshow of photos of things that you fermented, be it wine, vinegar, natural sodas, kimchi, any kind of vegetable, fruit, whatever it is that you're making. Take some real nice pictures. Make sure there's not too much stuff in the background. So make sure you really accentuate what it is you're trying to show off. It's okay if you have decorative things. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you just got a bunch of clutter, it can really detract from the subject of the photo. So good, clear, clean photos, send those to me at raincountryhomestead@gmail.com, because I want to get that video put together so it can publish at the end of February. Because yes, I am quite a ways ahead on my videos right now, and I like it that way. I need it to be that way. That means that if I need to take time off, I can do it, and you can still keep getting content 5 days a week, even if you're not getting those notifications on it. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed my this and that for the week, and any thoughts or ideas you'd like to share about any of the topics, please put them in comments down below. Remember, those comments, those likes, even those dislikes, believe it or not, actually do help the algorithm. So for those who dislike people's content just because you hate them or you're mad at them or you're whatever, you're actually helping them. So thank you for that. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.